3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home. It was modest. Our neighbors were wonderful. Life was good. So good, in fact, that 18 months later, when those neighbors decided to sell their house, which was larger and had more luxuries, like a driveway, a garage, and a bathtub, we jumped at the chance. We bought their house and put our old one right next door up for sale. After reading several motivation letters from potential buyers, we chose a Polish couple. They only spoke English to us, not Dutch like we did. Everything seemed normal. They asked for tips about the house. We had some pleasant small-scale small talk. But looking back, that was the calm before the storm. Even before the big incidents, things felt off. We started experiencing bizarre disturbances at the strangest hours. Sometimes at midnight, we'd hear heavy banging or incredibly loud music blasting through the walls without warning. It wasn't constant, but it was enough to make us feel like we didn't truly know who was living a few feet away. The first red flag appeared when the neighbor came home with severe damage to both sides of his car. It looked like he had scraped against a guardrail at high speed on both sides. When we asked what happened, he gave a clumsy excuse. A concrete pole on one side, a trailer taking a turn too wide on the other. We chose to believe him, even though the math didn't add up. One evening around 6 p.m., the neighbor called us in a total panic. He claimed people were outside his house, turning security cameras away. He begged us to check it out. "Call the police!" We looked, and sure enough, 2 men were breaking in. We called the cops immediately. It took them 20 minutes to arrive. The burglars were already gone. The neighbor's wife came racing into the street, parked her car, and frantically ran inside to her sweet little French bulldog, and the police who were already there. I was walking my dog, curiously watching, and I saw the husband park his car 3 streets away and walk to the scene, like he was hiding the vehicle from the police. That thought didn't occur to me at the moment. Later, when we checked the doorbell footage, we saw the burglar standing there before the break-in, calmly discussing which house to target. In Polish, nothing was stolen. No one was caught. I told the police it felt like a setup. I never heard back. A week later, I was at a housewarming party when my partner texted me. "The music next door is insanely loud again." A few minutes later, he called me. His tone had shifted to pure terror. The neighbor's car just came, tearing through our front garden and slammed into their own front door. 2 men were frantically loading the car with high-end electronics, flat-screen TVs, professional speakers, other expensive gear. They looked like the same men from the week before. This time, the police were a lot quicker. They arrived in exactly 7 minutes. The officers intercepted the men while they were still loading the car. When asked for ID, the men claimed they didn't have any. Then things got surreal. The man behind the wheel looked the officer in the eye and claimed to be my neighbor, using my neighbor's actual name. But there was a catch. In the 9 months they'd lived next to us, my neighbor had never spoken a single word of Dutch. This man, however, spoke fluent Dutch, with a thick Polish accent. Realizing the game was up, the men slammed the car into gear. A violent pursuit followed through our quiet streets, until the police managed to box them in and arrest them. But my partner could still hear movement inside our neighbor's house. The police went back in and dragged out a 3rd suspect. We were inside our own home with an officer, reporting the damage to our property when the doorbell rang. We turned around, and there he was, the actual neighbor. He was unrecognizable. His face was a swollen, bloody mess. One eye was swollen shut. His mouth was torn. His arm hung at a useless angle, covered in what looked like defensive stab wounds. He looked feral, aggressive, broken. The police officer tried to intervene, but the neighbor flat out refused to file a report or cooperate. Since the victim wouldn't speak, the officer had no choice. He sent him back to his house. Later that night, the neighbor rang our bell again. He was trembling. He confessed he had cheated on his wife, and he claimed she had sent people to take him out. He begged to sleep at our house. Terrified and wanting no part of this underworld drama, we refused. My partner offered to drive him to the hospital instead. We dropped him off at 10:30 p.m., telling him we were staying elsewhere for the night because we no longer felt safe. But we didn't stay elsewhere. We went home, locked every door, and tried to breathe. Around 1 a.m., our dog started growling. A specific low growl, he only uses it when someone's at the door. We checked the doorbell camera, and there he was, the neighbor, back from the hospital, standing on our porch, ringing the doorbell. Multiple times, we sat in the dark, watching the screen in silence. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a car turned onto the street. The neighbor panicked. He scrambled off the porch and hid behind our cars in the driveway, crouching in the shadows. Watching this bloodied, broken man lurking in the dark behind our own cars was one of the most unsettling things I've ever seen. The car stopped. A woman got out. It was his wife. She walked toward her front door, paused, and glanced at our driveway. She saw him. We held our breath, waiting for a confrontation, or worse. She walked toward him, and as she stepped into the pale yellow glow of the street lamp, she began to wail, a haunting guttural crying. He didn't say a word. She kept asking questions, her sobbing getting louder and louder, echoing through the empty street. Eventually, they both got into the car and drove away. We didn't see them for 3 days. We didn't even know where their dog was. The wife eventually returned alone. She found the dog inside, and she told us she doesn't think she'll ever see her husband again. Whatever the real story is, drugs, debt, or marriage turned lethal, I've realized one thing. I don't think I want to know. He quickly shut that down. We live in a safe neighborhood. You should stop watching scary movies. Unfortunately, I believed him and went back to bed. Every couple of weeks or months after that, I'd hear things again. Each time, I convinced myself it was all in my head. I tried to focus on my videos or fall asleep. When winter came and everything was covered in snow, it stopped. I eventually forgot about it. But the following year, it started again. It didn't happen often, once or twice a month at most, and always past 11 p.m. I tried not to pay attention to it, even when the noises sounded like clear footsteps or deep breathing. I watched a lot of scary movies and videos. I kept telling myself that has to be the reason. I avoided looking at the window altogether, even though I tried to believe it was all in my head. Part of me was terrified of being proven wrong. One night, against my better judgment, I looked, not directly at the window, that was too scary. I looked at the mirror instead. This time, I swear I saw the silhouette of a person. I ran upstairs again, and once again, after checking the entire backyard, my dad told me the same thing he had the year before, and once again I believed him. This went on for a while. I started going to bed earlier, watching videos louder, or with headphones, completely avoiding my mirror. or worse, looking directly at my window. It always stopped when the weather got colder, and started again in mid-spring. One night in early December of 2021, there was a huge windstorm. I was watching a stream with my boyfriend over Discord when I decided to grab a glass of water around 11:30 p.m. On my way, I noticed my parents sitting in the living room. It caught me off guard. They rarely stayed up that late, let alone outside their bedroom. Their faces looked tense, preoccupied. I asked if everything was okay. They brushed it off. "It's nothing." I assumed I had walked in on a conversation not meant for my ears, and headed back toward my room. As I turned toward the stairs, flashes of red and blue light caught my attention through the front window. A police car was pulling into our driveway. My parents immediately stood up, as if they'd been expecting it. They rushed me to my room, telling me they'd call me if needed. I wanted answers, but I knew it wasn't time to push. So I went back to my room, curiosity eating away at me. Not even 2 minutes later, I was called back upstairs. This time, they didn't keep me in the dark. My dad explained, about 15 to 20 minutes earlier during the windstorm, he had stepped into the backyard to make sure nothing had been blown over before going to bed. While scanning the yard, he noticed the light from my bedroom window illuminating something near it. As his eyes adjusted, he realized there was a man standing motionless just outside my window, staring in. My dad yelled at him and started moving toward him, but the man immediately turned and ran. He jumped the back fence, effortlessly, as if he'd done it 100 times before, and disappeared into the neighboring yards. In that moment, everything I had feared for years stopped being a possibility and became a fact. I hadn't imagined it. Someone really had been there. Terrified, my parents called the police right away. Then they went to knock on the neighbor's door to warn her. The older woman who lived there didn't open the door. Instead, she yelled at them to leave, or she would call the cops herself. The police eventually arrived, but since my dad hadn't gotten a clear look at the man, there wasn't much they could do. Increased patrols in the area. Recommended we install more cameras. We did. In retrospect, my back neighbor's reaction still feels deeply suspicious to me. Why was her first response to threaten my parents, when all they did was knock on her door to warn her? It raises a couple of questions. Was she living with that man my dad saw? Had she seen him too and genuinely thought it was him knocking? Did I know the person who stood outside my window for years? Or was it just some creepy neighbor who noticed a teenage girl's room with poorly covered blinds and took advantage of it? Did he only want to watch? Or was he working up to something else? Even now, those questions haunt me. Knowing that someone was really there the entire time makes every sound I brushed off, every breath I thought I imagined, and every silhouette I forced myself not to look at feel so much more terrifying. I've since switched rooms. I can't look at windows facing our backyard the same way anymore. Thank God mine now faces the street. What scares me the most isn't that it happened. It's how long it went on for, without anyone knowing, and how easily it could have continued. Story 2. The Window in the Mirror. This all started back in 2017. I moved into a new house in the suburbs of Montreal, Canada, with my parents and little sister. Before I get into the juicy part of the story, I need to explain a few details about my room and its placement in the house. For everything to make sense from my point of view, the house we moved into is a split-level home, meaning It has staggered floor levels connected by short flights of stairs. My room was neither on the main floor nor in the basement. It sat exactly in between the two, at ground level. One wall shared space with the garage. The opposite side had a large window that looked out into the backyard. At the time, that window had plastic vertical blinds with several missing panels. So even when they were fully closed, I could still see outside through the gaps. On the garage side of my room was my closet, which had large sliding mirror doors. This meant that when I was in bed, no matter which side I faced, I could always see my window reflected back at me. I started noticing things about a year after we moved in. I was 15. I remember watching YouTube videos on my tablet late at night. I had trouble falling asleep. One night, I heard something outside my window. I had left it open because it was really hot. We hadn't invested in an AC unit yet, so I relied on whatever breeze I could get. After hearing what sounded like footsteps or shuffling, I quickly paused my video and put the tablet down. The noise stopped. It made me think it had just been part of what I was watching, or maybe my imagination. I resumed the video and heard it again. I looked to my left, toward the window. Nothing. So I eventually fell asleep. For a few nights, nothing happened. But then, one night, a couple nights later, during my usual late-night YouTube and show-watching routine, I heard the shuffling again. I paused what I was watching, listened, this time longer than before. I swear I could hear breathing now, too. I glanced at my window. Again, nothing. I convinced myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, and turned to face my closet instead. As I picked my tablet back up to resume the video, I saw something move at my window, through one of the gaps in the blinds. Reflected in the mirror, a chill ran down my spine. I got up immediately and went to wake my parents. Better to be safe than sorry, I told them what I had seen and heard. And even though my dad clearly doubted me, he went outside to check the backyard. A few minutes later, he came back. He'd checked every corner. Didn't see anything. He told me if someone had been there, he would have heard them come in through the squeaky gate, or at least heard them leave. He also checked the Ring camera, no one walking around the house toward the backyard. I suggested the person could have jumped the fence into the neighbor's yard. Story 3. The room behind the wall. It was a cold winter day in mid-December. I was 15 years old. I originally lived in a suburban area of Alberta with my parents in our apartment. But we were running low on space, and with my little sister on her way, we knew we had to move to a bigger house. It seemed lucky for us at first. There was a house just a few blocks down selling for a very cheap price tag. Granted, it wasn't the best looking, or in the best area, but it had room to grow in. And for the price we paid, we could renovate to our heart's content. My dad did renovate slightly with the money we had left. Mainly the basement. It was almost unusable without being fixed up. Cleaning, carpeting, new beams, fixing the bathroom, and fresh wallpaper with a cool pattern I got to choose myself. For the first couple of months, living there had been great. I was really enjoying the new house, until the first questionable moment came along. It was my father's birthday. To celebrate, we all went to a restaurant in the evening. All went well until we came home. Our front door was wide open. My mom was absolutely shaken. We begged my dad to drive us away from the house while she called the police. My dad grabbed a large, heavy wrench from his toolbox in the truck and went into the house to search for the intruder. My mom and I called the cops anyway. We sat there for 5 excruciatingly long minutes before they arrived. They searched the house, found my dad. He came back out and told us nothing was actually stolen. No one was in the house either. but some of our items had been moved or knocked over, specifically the books on my bookshelf. The police finished their search and told us the same thing. We were still a little paranoid, but finally we went inside. From that day forward, I would always hear strange noises coming from the walls, and sometimes from underneath our basement. Might I add, my room was there, in the basement. But I always dismissed the sounds as the pipes. This was an older house after all. That was until one night. Something unexplainable happened. It was around 2 in the morning. I was playing with my Nintendo DS under the sheets, no volume, so my parents didn't know I was still awake. That's when I heard it, clear laughter, coming from the wall to the side of my bed. My heart froze in time. My eyes probably widened to the size of plates. I decided to wait for a while, see if it happened again. After about 30 minutes of laying still as a stone, I decided it must have just been my sleep-deprived imagination, and finally went to sleep. I woke up the next morning in my bed as usual. Nothing changed. Despite that laugh still burning in my mind, I tried to pass it off. I would still hear the same strange noises, every so often for the next couple of weeks, but that felt normal for me. Now, this is when the next occurrence happens. By this time, my sister was already born. The basement was big enough, and my mom trusted me with keeping her safe at night, so she shared the room with me. This doesn't mean my mom didn't use baby monitors, because she did. She kept the parent units in the living room and the other in the kitchen. One night, my parents had gone out for a late dinner. They left me to take care of the house until they got back. I was in the living room watching a movie when I got up to get a snack from the kitchen. That's when I noticed odd noises coming from the baby monitor, and my heart sank. I knew no one else was home, but those were footsteps, loud, heavy footsteps. Suddenly my fear was realized. My sister started crying, and I heard a faint shh sound come out of the speaker, followed by a crash. I instantly did the first thing that came to mind, which, now, thinking clearly in retrospect, could have gotten us both killed. I ran as quickly as I could up to my parents' room and grabbed my father's rifle. I didn't have the key to unlock the trigger lock or any of the ammunition, but I figured I would pretend it was loaded. Hide the lock with my hand. If I was attacked, I would use the buttstock to defend myself. All I thought of was getting my sister to safety. When I got to the basement door, I opened it quietly, walked down the steps, turned to face my sister's crib. No one was there, but she was still crying, and the baby monitor was on the ground, sideways. I mustered all the courage I could. I'm armed. My voice cracked. Come out before I find you. Still nothing. I grabbed my sister and ran upstairs. I closed the basement door and pushed a chair under the handle to keep it locked. Then I called my parents. They called the police and got home as fast as they could. The police got to my house before my parents did. They made me sit in the back of the cop car with my baby sister while one of the officers went inside to investigate. When my parents arrived, I told them everything that happened. They were confused, very concerned, but they knew I wasn't the type of kid who would lie about something like this. The police officer came out, gave us the all clear. No one is in the house. Just as they finished talking to us and were about to leave, my dad asked worriedly, "Did you check behind the bookshelf?" When I got to the basement door, I opened it quietly, walked down the steps, turned to face my sister's crib. No one was there, but she was still crying, and the baby monitor was on the ground, sideways. I mustered all the courage I could. I'm armed. My voice cracked. Come out before I find you. Still nothing. I grabbed my sister and ran upstairs. I closed the basement door and pushed a chair under the handle to keep it locked. Then I called my parents. They called the police and got home as fast as they could. The police got to my house before my parents did. They made me sit in the back of the cop car with my baby sister while one of the officers went inside to investigate. When my parents arrived, I told them everything that happened. They were confused, very concerned, but they knew I wasn't the type of kid who would lie about something like this. The police officer came out, gave us the all clear. No one is in the house. Just as they finished talking to us and were about to leave, my dad asked worriedly, "Did you check behind the bookshelf?" In my room, there was a bookshelf that came embedded into the wall. I was very confused when my dad asked to look behind it. The police officer was confused too. He asked my father to come inside with him and point out what he meant. Lo and behold, when we got downstairs, my bookshelf was pushed open slightly, like a door, and the basement window that leads to the backyard was opened all the way, with my desk chair planted under it. In my room, there was a bookshelf that came embedded into the wall. I was very confused when my dad asked to look behind it. The police officer was confused too. He asked my father to come inside with him and point out what he meant. Lo and behold, when we got downstairs, my bookshelf was pushed open slightly, like a door, and the basement window that leads to the backyard was opened all the way, with my desk chair planted under it. Behind the bookshelf was a small room. Some of the pipes to our house ran through it, wrapped around some of the walls. On the ground, food wrappers, one of our cups that had gone missing, lotion, a switchblade, and an apple, partially eaten, still slightly fresh. Someone had been living in our house, and we didn't even know it this whole time. The police said that most likely, while they were outside, talking to us, whoever was here, escaped through the open window. They told us to call if we ever noticed anything suspicious, but they didn't think the person would come back, now that we knew of their secret. That wasn't even the most horrifying part, however. A few days later, I pushed open the bookshelf myself, explored it top to bottom. That's when I found a tiny hole in the wall, and when I looked through, it pointed directly at my bed and my dresser. Whoever was in there was watching me sleep, get dressed, play my video games, do my homework, speak on the phone, everything. They knew most of my life. 3 stories, 3 homes, 3 reminders that sometimes the scariest things aren't the monsters under your bed. They're the ones already inside your walls. 3 stories, 3 homes, 3 reminders that sometimes the scariest things aren't the monsters under your bed. They're the ones already inside your walls.